Hello everyone and welcome to Blog Run Everything and welcome back to the channel and welcome to yet another underwhelming performance by FC Barcelona. Not that I'm too surprised really with what I saw unfold here. Club Brugge definitely are a very good counter-attacking team. I think we saw that last season as well when they played, was it City or something like that? And, they can get goals on the break. So knowing how Barcelona has been struggling right now against teams with strong counter-attacking patterns of play, you kind of expected that this would be one of those dodgy performances. And part of me wants to kind of chalk this one up to being a match kind of like we saw last season against Benfica. Remember that crazy match that Barcelona ended up winning late on, and funny enough, Barca could have probably done that this time around as well, but it was a bit different. Now, Barcelona didn't in any way, shape or form play well here, but it was definitely much better than what we saw against, say, maybe Girona or Sevilla or Real Madrid. In fact, this one, it felt a bit more like, the Rayo match if Barcelona actually, were a bit more attacking. You know what? Now that I think about it now, because Rayo really just dominated Barcelona. It's not even close. This time around, Barcelona was getting quite a fair share of chances. Hit the woodwork like, I don't know, 3 times, and I mean that third one, that shot by Eric Garcia, started going in. Anywho, who comes away from this for Barcelona with their heads held high? Probably just Yamal. I know, not maybe you could argue Fermin, but the way he disappeared later on in that match, it was very disappointing. Now I know already what's going to happen here is that a lot of the tacticals, a lot of the guys who do their football analysis, they're all going to come through and they'll be talking about Barcelona's highline, like, oh, this is all Barcelona's highline, Barca's highline, and it's not necessarily that, because the highline in this case is just simply, you're seeing how bad things are. You're seeing players making those runs in behind that highline because other things are not being done that are supposed to be done. And it's those things not being done that's actually the problem. For example, if you look at each of those, goals by Brugge where they got in behind Barcelona, watch the guy who plays the pass, to feed, who was it, Forbes or whoever it was running in behind Barcelona. You notice there's like literally nobody around him. There's no pressure on the man playing the pass. These dudes are standing in acres of space. And that is exactly what the problem is for Barcelona. The press is basically non-existent. It might as well not be there. Last season, sure, players would still get in behind Barca's, high line, but a lot of times they'd be caught offside. And one of the reasons that is because the player was under more pressure to play the pass, so he couldn't wait for the perfect timing. He'd end up playing the pass either early or late, and his teammates would not have set himself up. So I'm willing to bet, even without looking at stats like. I'm willing to bet even without looking at stats like, passes per defensive action. I'm willing to bet that Barcelona's press this season is probably working at like half the efficiency that it was last season. And sure, some people right now are arguing that it's because you don't have, Rafinha in there, and once he's back, things will probably go back to normal. I don't really think it's going to be that simple because, in my opinion, I think it's more of a desire and a hunger issue. And the players right now, they're not as hungry to get the ball back as they were last season. So that's what's leading to this press basically collapsing. It only takes like 2 or 3 passes to play through Barca's press, which, if you're a team like PSG, you can make that one pass and you play through Barca's press. That's how terrible Barcelona's press is right now. And in this match, Barca's press was terrible once again. And maybe I'm also just, being a bit too generous to Club Brugge, in the sense that probably a less naive team would have seen off this match. It would have either ended 2-1 to them or 3-1 to them, because they would have grabbed, like, a late goal on the break, like we saw Sevilla do. So, you could argue that Club Brugge were a bit too naive in how they set up, because they were still open, and they allowed Barcelona to attack them really and just get in their box almost at will. If you look at the stats, Barca had like 20 plus shots in this game. Compare that with matches like Sevilla, for example, where Barcelona were really tied down, and you see a big difference. But anyway, at the end of the day, disappointing performance from Barca, disappointing results, and you just keep wondering, like, how much longer is Hansi Flick going to let this keep happening? Because, like I said, the issue is pretty straightforward. There's no hunger. Put in players who have a hunger, players who will chase down every ball. That's what you get with a Draw Fernandez. That's what you get with a Guille Fernandez, with a Tony Fernandez. That's what you get a bit more of, I hope, with, a Rony Bardash. But, we'll wait to see how all of that goes. Hopefully, maybe Rafinha returning could spark something. But, I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. But aside from that, let me know your thoughts on the performance and what you thought of the game. But I thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day, and Forza Barca.